Welcome to Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. We're back to have another conversation with a change maker working to accelerate the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society. Our topic today is food waste, one of the largest sources of easily avoided greenhouse gas emissions. More than a third of the food that humans grow each year goes unused and often ends up in landfills or just in the trash somewhere. Project Drawdown estimates that we could reduce CO2 emissions by 90 to 101 gigatons annually simply by cutting out 50 to 75% of food waste. Our guest today is Maddy Rotman. She's head of sustainability at Imperfect Foods, a delivery service for sustainably sourced produce and packaged foods that would otherwise end up in landfills as food waste. Imperfect Foods is also building its own distribution system using local vans and drivers who follow regular weekly routes to reduce the emissions associated with their deliveries. They also plan to have an entirely electric delivery fleet by 2027. So there's a lot to unpack in this food box program. Let's dive in. You can learn more about Imperfect Foods at www.imperfectfoods.com. Imperfect Foods has no space, no dash, imperfectfoods.com. Welcome to the show, Maddy. How are you doing today?
Hi, Mitch. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Good. We got a lot of questions. I want to start off. Can you tell us basically the outline of the Imperfect Foods subscription program? What kinds of produce and products are included, and what's a typical box include in terms of number of meals?
Yeah, that's a fun question. So you nailed it at the intro of how Imperfect works, right? We're an online grocery system where customers go every week online and shop. So you log onto the website, you go onto the app, you open it up, and you're going to find basically a grocery store. And you're going to be able to customize everything you want yourself. So you can add, apples, oranges, pretzel pieces, etc., or you can take things out of your cart. So it's 100% customizable. And you're going to find a really fun rotating assortment of produce, things that our farmers each week come and tell us that they have that are wonky, too small, too big, or surplus, and a bunch of great grocery items as well, some short-coded, some packaging changes, and some great staples. So you're really going to get to do your full family shop, however that looks and whatever that looks like to you. So it could be, just meals for the weekend, or it could be meals for your whole week.
Now, let's talk about what imperfect means. You just hit on it briefly, which is sometimes it's too small or too big, but it's still perfectly good produce. Where does this stuff come from?
Yeah, it's, we talk about too small, too big, wonky, odd size, odd shapes, because that really is what imperfect means. All this food is incredibly delicious, incredibly nutritious, all great food that our farmers, our producers, all of our ranchers, our fishermen have grown, produced, made, and they don't have a market for it. And the reason is because conventional retailers have really high beauty standards. They have standards of, the size, the shape, the color that it has to be. And so when you grow, acres and acres of cauliflower and there's, high heat and it might get a little sunburned, all of a sudden you're a farmer with great cauliflower and nowhere to sell it. So Imperfect Foods is really just a marketplace for all of these delicious, and great foods that are a little wonky, a little imperfect, but really don't have a place to go. And we want to make sure that all food can get eaten, no matter, what size or shape it is.
Well, that's really interesting. I never really thought about it this way, but it's a little like the way that we body shame people in media. But it's everybody's perfectly okay. They're perfectly human. They just don't look like the ideal. And that's what we're really talking about here is a false impression of what perfection is.
Yeah, it's really sort of breaking down our beauty standards that we have. We have these ideals, as you named it, of what we need to be, who we need to be, how we need to look. And we do that to food too. And we're a little less conscious of it because it's happening at so many points, right? It's happening at the grocery store. It's happening when you're shopping. It's happening when you get something delivered. And it's really these sort of micro moments that we judge our food. And we really need to learn to sort of bite into it or smell it or taste it. But we look with our eyes first, and we're trying to sort of grow this movement of just because it's a little wonky doesn't mean it's not delicious.
So how much does the service cost? I know because you can customize it, it's going to vary a bit, but what roughly should somebody expect to pay on a weekly basis?
Yeah, it's because it's not a set cost. It's a little hard to answer that question. It's really about your grocery shop. So because you can add everything yourself and remove everything yourself, we're not telling you what you have to order. It's really up to you. The price is up to you.
But say a typical box costs how much, would you say? Do you have an average value?
I'm not sure what that is today. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Yeah.
Looking at it, it looked to me like it was in the $35 range, but that was when I picked through the things, and it's very affordable.
Yeah, super affordable. And I think maybe the $35 range might be around what you're going to shop for. There's definitely folks that are, very high upwards in the, hundreds, $200 range. And then there's some folks that, maybe have a smaller basket, like $20.
It's interesting. So multiple boxes too. So now,
yeah.
How does a year's subscription change a customer's environmental footprint? Is it, how much food do you divert from other outcomes?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way it works is that each customer shops every week, picks what they want in their box, gets it delivered. And on average, a customer saves between 5 and 6 pounds of produce from being wasted each week. And that's, they're saving food from maybe being left in the field, maybe it was going to get landfilled, and maybe it was even going to get processed and sort of go to a lesser outcome. So on average, about 5 to 6 pounds. And so then our customers, in a year, are able to save between 30 and 45 pounds of food. And that really adds up. And so they're saving that from being wasted at the farm or in the field. And then what happens is we also help you, make sure you're not wasting food at home. But all of our customers together last year saved about 44 million pounds of food, which is quite incredible. So small actions from each customer each week by shopping really add up collectively, and our farmers notice. So, each customer saves about 5 to 6 pounds per order. And then collectively we're saving, tens of millions of pounds per year.
Have you translated that into, for instance, other factors like water saved or CO2 emissions prevented?
Yeah. So when we're able to save food, when a customer is able to, save a grapefruit, save an apple, save some broken pretzels, what actually happens is they're not only saving the food from being wasted, but they're also sort of saving the water that is going to go into growing more food. You want to make sure that when you grow an apple, there's a lot of water that goes into it. And when you throw it out, you're kind of throwing all that water away too. So the water gets saved and we avoid greenhouse gases from growing more food, or, as some of the more nerdy carbon folks will know, it's sort of embedded emissions in the food. And so collectively, we've saved as a company, as a collective, as a community, over 166 million pounds of food. And that actually has avoided over 5 billion gallons of water and over 42,000 tons of greenhouse gases. So each bit of food that we're saving, it's not only saving the food, but it's really saving the water, which is, becoming a growing and growing more heated topic of something we have to be aware of, as well as avoiding greenhouse gas emissions. And that gets to your original point of, we're in this, we've built this business, we're building this movement because we know that if we can eliminate food waste, we can actually mitigate climate change. And it's because we're, avoiding these greenhouse gases.
Now, we're talking about more than produce here too. You also offer meat, fish. Where did those come from? Are they remaindered items? I mean, that would be what I would think if I was at the store, but I don't get the impression that's what you're selling.
So we have a really great offering for a lot of our producers of when they have changes to their packaging, when they have short-coded items, when they have surplus and excess, we offer them a marketplace as well. So even, last week in my order, I had raspberry jam. And what happened was there were chia seeds stuck in the lid. And so the manufacturer was actually going to throw all of those away until we rescued it. And so there's a lot of these.
Just a little ugly. Again.
Just a little ugly chia seed stuck in the lid. And you wouldn't even notice until you opened it. And it was, quite minimal. But these are some of these high levels of perfection that our retailers are expecting. And we're able to go rescue this food. So there's a lot of packaging changes, short-coded items, and even just surplus and excess in the grocery space. And that's actually why we transitioned from being just a produce company to being a full service grocer back in 2019 was because we realized there was so much more food we could save across the aisles. And we were hearing it from all these CPG and packaged food brands. So we offer a lot of those, and those are fun and rotating. There are a lot of short-lived items on the site, right? We might have only had the raspberry jam for 2 weeks. We might have a hot sauce only in Texas 1 week, and sort of these regional plays of how can we save more food.
Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
That locality or localism is a very interesting element of how you could do these hyper-local food supplies too.
Yeah, and I think not all food savings look the same. So sometimes, we'll get a hot sauce supplier only in Texas who says, I have just this amount, and it might only be enough for the Texas market. And sometimes we have items like our broken pretzel pieces where there's so many broken pretzels. And the story of those is that most pretzel manufacturers, actually all the broken ones just fall to the ground and they get thrown out. And so we've actually taken those, covered them in dark chocolate, upcycling them into a new product. And we sell our dark chocolate pretzel pieces in our Imperfect Foods private label. So
I want to talk a little more about your private label in a bit.
Yeah.
First, let me take a break. We need to run a little advertising, pay for the show. We'll be right back. We're back, continuing the conversation with Maddy Rotman. She's the head of sustainability at Imperfect Foods. We've talked a lot about the scope of what you've done so far, but when you look at the overall amount of food wasted in the United States, what percentage do you think that Imperfect Foods could begin to distribute? Can you scale up to meet that kind of a goal?
Yeah, this is something we think about every day. I think often people forget how big the food waste problem is. It's 229 million tons of food in the US that are grown, and about 54 million tons that are wasted. So even though we're so excited about how much we can save and how much we're able to grow every year, we need to grow much bigger, much quicker, much faster. And we need more people to help us grow this movement to make this possible. And we're not in this alone. We know that there's many solutions and many different points at which food gets wasted in the food supply chain. So we're tasked, and we have big aspirations to grow quickly and grow across the country with magnitude so that we can tackle this problem. But we know that we can't do it alone, and we need a lot of other solutions to scale with us. We want to help every farmer find a place for those, twisted carrots, knobby potatoes, but we also know that food waste is happening in other places too. It's happening at restaurants, it's happening in cafeterias, it's happening in customers' homes. So we got 229 million tons of food to save. And we've got a lot of way to go.
Well, it's great to be a leader in a hybrid movement like that. And obviously you can look selectively at what you want to include in your offerings and encourage others to take on the things you don't want to. Now, another element of your business is really intriguing is you've announced a net zero goal for 2030. And that's among the most aggressive goals we've seen for any companies we've talked to or even reviewed. Does that net zero calculation include all the emissions you prevented counted as an offset, or will you be truly carbon neutral in 2030?
Yeah, that's a great question for the greenhouse gas protocol. No, the avoided emissions that we calculate, and again, the avoided emissions are emissions we avoid when we save food and emissions we avoid when we have really great routing that sort of beats the US average of if everyone went to the store themselves. So sort of our routing system avoids emissions. And those are not things we can subtract from our operations. So what we do, and we think about this really intentionally and thoughtfully, is if our business is around saving food and helping to eliminate food waste, which mitigates greenhouse gases, we want to make sure that we're also growing an operation that's making this possible thoughtfully, intentionally, and one that's also not creating more harm. So we have done an incredible job over the last 2 years, 3 years to measure our operational emissions and build plans within each sector of our business to reduce those emissions before we offset them. So we've done a lot of work in our operations to become more efficient and reduce our waste to landfill, and doing all of these smaller pieces and these smaller programs and projects to reduce our emissions so that then we can offset them, offset whatever we can't reduce. And so, as we want to be a leader in this space, we know that we can push consumers and push the consumer narrative around accepting, loving imperfect foods, imperfect produce, imperfect groceries, imperfect foods as the concept, not the brand necessarily, so that we can eliminate food waste. And we also want to push the grocery sector that we have a huge responsibility in this. Mm-hmm. The food system itself is responsible for about a quarter of the greenhouse gas emissions, the entire food system. And so we know that as a retailer, as a grocery business, we have a huge responsibility, and we all need to look in the mirror and make sure that all these businesses we're supporting are working aggressively and thoughtfully towards building a more responsible future.
So just to unpack that with a little more detail, particularly from the nerdy PhD.
Yeah, let's hit them.
Scope 1 and 2 is what you will be net neutral on by 2030. It sounds like Scope 3, you are going to be encouraging progress, but you really can only focus on what you directly manage.
It's actually more nuanced than that. So we are going to be looking at our operational emissions, so everything that it requires to operate our business, and that includes Scope 1, 2, and 3. The pieces that we are separately programming against is our food production. And so food production is all the food that is grown, and that is inherently Scope 3. And so those we have plans to save more food, which avoids emissions. Right. But the part that our net zero commitment overlaps is everything in our operations, and it's Scope 1, 2, and 3 of our operational emissions.
So that's great to hear. Now, the other element of this, and it's particularly intriguing to me because we get a lot of questions about home delivery being more or less intensive than going shopping. You have a very structured system where within a zip code, you have a single daily delivery route once a week. And that, of course, means that you can optimize the routes like you were talking about a moment before. How does that compare to the one-off delivery approach that somebody like Instacart or Amazon provides? How much more efficient is it?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And it's something that consumers are becoming more aware of as online grocery and sort of everything getting delivered becomes more of the norm over the past few years. So the way that Imperfect has sort of always operated is that we deliver to neighborhoods at a time, which is a really different way and sort of a la the milkman model, in that we deliver to each neighborhood. So I'm a Thursday customer. My entire neighborhood gets their delivery on Thursdays. The one truck comes and delivers to me and all my neighbors. And what we're doing there is we're actually avoiding excess miles from being driven on the road. So if each of my neighbors or each of all of our customers had gone to the store themselves, they would have had much more greenhouse gases and much more miles driven. Right. So what we think about is that by actually batching by day, we avoided last year alone over 13,900 tons of greenhouse gases. And that's, like taking over 1,500 passenger vehicles off the road for a year. So we know that by batching these orders and by ensuring that not each person is going to the store themselves, we're actually building sort of what we call a conscious convenience model of we're super convenient. We'll show up to your door with all your groceries for you, but we want to make sure that we're doing it thoughtfully for the environment.
And so just by waiting a couple extra days from the consumer's perspective, you can really reduce a lot of impact. And it's interesting. We've looked at the Amazon model, which appears to be 12 to 15% more efficient than going to the store. But by doing this, it sounds like you could get substantially better outcomes. Let me ask this: are the drivers employees, and are they buying these electric vehicles, or are you building an internal organization that will staff this and operate the fleet?
Yeah, so our last mile is done by all of our Imperfect Foods employees. So they're all full-time employees that come to Imperfect and they pick up one of our Imperfect vans at their sort of home base and get all the orders and go out for the day. So they're not using their own vehicles, they're using the Imperfect vans vehicles. And we are excited to be transitioning those in due time towards electrification. We did our first couple routes last year and are very excited about the progress that the industry is making and uncovering some of the challenges and small nuances of running a delivery business on an electric van, everything to do with how hilly the neighborhood is and the range, as well as the capacity. When you fill a van with a lot of groceries, it gets really heavy quite quickly. And so it reduces the range of the van. So to answer your question bluntly, our delivery drivers will pick up Imperfect Foods vans, not their own passenger vehicles, and do all of the deliveries as they do today. And as we transition these vehicles away from gas and into sort of the future of clean vehicles, whether that be electric or hybrid or a combination, we're excited that they'll continue to pick up their Imperfect vans.
So it also sounds like you're going to need to have a lot of distribution centers. How many do you have now, and how many do you need to add over the next few years to expand your coverage?
Yeah, so to get to clean vehicles, we don't need to change our distribution model. So our distribution model today covers over, I think I'm pretty close to this, it's about 35 states. We've got drivers and vans all over the country, quite close to the actual end location or your home, I should say. Our drivers are quite close to your home. So they do really efficient routes and they're all over the country. So we have a hub and spoke model. So we have fewer fulfillment centers and a lot of distribution centers. And so our incredible drivers who make Imperfect Foods possible are stationed all over the country. And they are the ones that deliver to your house every day, mostly with a smile and an Imperfect Foods hat every time. So they're already on the field, in the ground, and ready to keep delivering those orders.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you're making food from Imperfect Food, like chocolate-covered pretzels. What else are you making now, and do you see a lot of potential to expand the range of packaged foods that you manufacture from Imperfect stuff?
Yeah, so Imperfect Foods started our private label a couple of years ago, and we really started it when we realized that there was food that could be saved and there wasn't a brand to put it in the package. So for example, I mentioned earlier, our pretzel pieces of the pretzel manufacturers package pretzels for all of these different brands, and the broken ones fall to the bottom, and there was no one that would put the broken ones in their brand and brand it as pretzel pieces. Mm-hmm. And so we built a private label to actually go in and save food in the supply chain. So some of my favorites are, we have our pretzel pieces, we have our dried mangoes that actually take ripe mangoes in the field, dry them right there, and then package them, because these are mangoes that are too ripe to ship and actually would get thrown out. And so we're upcycling them into a dried mango snack. Our fruit snack pieces are actually all the fruit leathers. When they cut them, there's a little bit of the edges. And so we take the small edges and they become strips, right? And so it's these different ways that we go into the supply chain and figure out where is there excess or surplus that's getting thrown out and how can we take it. So a lot of opportunity for us to keep finding new ways to help make food supply chains more efficient and actually bring more value back to our producers by packaging this food and selling it rather than throwing it out. So I'm excited to see how we evolve this and how we continue to sort of follow the waste, as we joke, and make more delicious products over the coming years.
So you might also have private label items that are highly regional just because they are naturally occurring there, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Some of it's private label, some of it's branded products, but we've got a really fun mix, and all in the name of how can we find food that would have been thrown out or would have been wasted, and how can we make it keep it delicious and get it to someone's plate.
So the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is one of the coolest things you do, is the packaging return program. Tell us how that works. The drivers pick this stuff up. What can customers return, and what happens with the material?
So I love that you love this program because it's something that I can talk about for hours, but I'll make it quick. When we expanded our offerings from just produce into proteins and dairy and all of the aisles of the grocery store, you also have to keep all that food safe. And you need to make sure that it stays cold and it gets to customers safely. We don't want to create any food waste along the way. And what happens is you order a box and you open and you're like, why is there all this packaging? And we just kept hearing from customers over and over, I feel so guilty. I don't know why there's so many ice packs, gel packs. What do I do with this hard to recycle plastic insulation? And so we built a packaging return program to help our customers with exactly this, the hard to recycle plastic packaging that we provide you to keep your food safe. But you didn't actually order it. So each week our customers can return to us our insulated liners. It's a silver liner. They're gel packs. And if you order eggs, it comes with a green egg carton liner that wraps around it to keep them safe. So those 3 items our customers can actually just leave out on their porch, in their mailroom, wherever your box gets delivered at your front door. And our drivers will take it back. And we actually take all of those gel packs and we use third parties to sanitize them, clean them, and we refreeze them and reuse them. And all of the hard to recycle plastic liners, we actually get recycled. So we aggregate all of our customers across the country and built a recycling market for this really tough number 4 LDPE plastic. So again, sort of finding creative ways to use the power of our imperfect network and build really great solutions to eliminate waste. But our customers really love it. And it's something we're proud of that our drivers make possible. Again, our drivers are in all of our neighborhoods. And because we have that last mile ourselves, they're able to activate and help our customers solve this problem.
So customers put these materials, this is, by the way, great, because I have an entire shelf in a freezer of gel packs from food delivery that I just hate.
Yeah.
But so I can drop that on my porch. Do I put it in a box? And it doesn't sound like you're taking the boxes back at this point. Have you looked at how to deal with cardboard?
Yeah, we're not taking the boxes, and you can put it in a box in your front door, but our driver will leave it, or you can just leave the gel packs on the front door. Most Americans, and I say most, it's about 80% of Americans have access to recycling cardboard. It's one of the best recycling markets we have, although there's a lot of work that we can do from an infrastructure standpoint on recycling. So we know that most customers have an option for that cardboard box. The thing that we know most customers do not have an option is for all this plastic. Yeah. And so we're working on the toughest problems first, and knowing that there's a lot of work we can do as a business, but also a lot of work from a policy and infrastructure standpoint that we're dreaming for in the future.
So how our listeners want to check out Imperfect Foods? Is there a deal for first-time shoppers? How would they get that first purchase at a good price?
Yeah, go on to imperfectfoods.com, as you mentioned at the beginning of the episode. And if you actually use Earth911, the name of this podcast, you'll get a discount on your first order.
Oh, well, thank you. We appreciate that. Well, Maddy, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mitch. And thanks for everyone for listening.
We've been speaking with Maddy Rotman, Head of Sustainability at Imperfect Foods. You're going to want to check this out. This is a great way to get some good food at a good price. And as you heard, if you go to imperfectfoods.com and use the code Earth911 on your first purchase, you'll save a little extra. Do check it out. What we're learning, as through many of the conversations on the show, is that our food supply is going to be more deeply managed, that we're going to look into it, not just to see where all the pretty and perfect food is, but where all of the usable food is, and route it to people so that it can be consumed without ending up in a landfill. And that is going to be critical to reducing our overall carbon footprint, improving the health of people around the country because they have access to better food. And as Maddy outlined, we're going to have other programs like those that collect food from restaurants that would otherwise go to waste and route that to people in need, or to people who simply want to get a good deal on a dinner. A lot is going to change in our lives, and it's going to be a good thing. This is Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. We're going to be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, I hope you'll take a few minutes to share this podcast as well as all the others that we've done. There's about 300 now. With your friends, family, coworkers, let's get more people talking about more ideas so we create less waste. We're going to be back soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.